Hello and welcome to another landscape painting tutorial by me, Andrew Broussard. Today, as per usual, I have my Stonehenge Aqua quarter sheet. This is 100% cotton paper. I am going to take the medium Hake brush and very quickly get some water on this. And while the paper stretches and absorbs this water, we're going to talk about our palette and some ideas for today's painting. And by today, I mean tonight. It's like 10:30 at night on a Thursday. But, you know, with the whole stuff going on worldwide, you know, I've taken us some very weird hours. So the paper is covered with water. Earlier today, I did a kind of water scene with watercolor, and that was tonal with the phthalo green and the quinacridone rose. Today, I'm going to go back to my original tonal palette, and it's going to be the Venetian red and the sap green. This was kind of derived from what I saw oil painters, contemporary oil painters using with their tonalism demonstrations, so I pulled that over to watercolor. So we're going to have those two Da Vinci brand, if you're interested in the brand that I'm using. With this one, I'm thinking I'm going to do lamp black. I have, in the past, as I started to expand upon this palette, I would use Payne's Gray, and I would use phthalo blue and ultramarine blue. The lamp black is the Da Vinci brand. I would use Payne's Gray as well, but I think I'm going to just go for the darker with this one. If we do ultramarine, I'll let you know. Ultramarine was Da Vinci brand as well. Phthalo blue was Van Gogh brand. And a little bit of the phthalo blue goes a really, really long way. So those are potential colors. What else can make its way into it? Maybe lemon yellow. I'll let you know about that. The lemon yellow I have, I believe, is Cotman brand. Nope, I switched over to Van Gogh brand. No reason for switching that. It's just I had a couple of small tubes of it. And that was the next tube that I had grabbed out. Okay, so let this flatten out. Now, inspiration for this painting. Today, I had done a sketch of a painting by Hermann Herzog on the way to the fishing hole. And I did that in a brown fountain pen ink on tinted paper. And what stood out in my mind was the location of a barn within it, a person walking, and yeah, those two things. And then there was a potential light source that I noticed but was not present within the painting. So there was a few things that have been sitting on my mind. How they're going to pop out in this painting, I'm not sure. But let's kick things off with our kind of free-form tonal approach. I'm going to grab sap green and Venetian red, and mixing these two together are going to give me kind of a brown with some green tint and red tint to it. I'm going to draw from the ideas of the Hudson River Valley School. Most likely we'll have an area of water between it. We'll have shapes come up and cut into that water, and we'll see where we go with it. Let's flip. The previous one, the drawing that I had pulled from, became slanted, triangular. I'll do a triangular shape here. So this will be more of a blocking dark as the eye goes from left to right, and we'll come up into the sky. Then what I'll think of do is leave this quite light with this painting style and approach I like to dab. And we'll have a light source coming from behind here, and we'll have shadows going across this way. I think that's maybe the main part of the composition. We'll have some land right here. Okay, let's build up this concentration of pigment. This is a very fun way to paint, and it's a lot of fun if you do it on a smooth board with oil paint. It's just really fun, where sometimes you get results a lot quicker than you expected, and you get to the point where you're like, I know I should be done, but I'm just having so much fun that I keep on wanting to push paint around. My one issue with this combination of colors, within watercolor we have quite a drying shift with these two. I've discovered that the Quin and the Quin Rose and the Phthalo Green, and when I say I discovered, I mean I'm sure plenty of people have discovered this on their own, that those two do not have as much of a drying shift as this one does. But that combination gives us a very interesting, very pretty gray, while this one gives us a very beautiful brown. So it's nice having different ones to play with. And that's why I had to add, like I said, I use ultramarine with this mix. I also use the phthalo blue and the Payne's gray, but this time I think I'll use black and see how that plays out. Just put a little tone in the sky, and then I'm gonna pull it back. Okay, so this is a buildup of concentration of pigment again. We have this tree structure. We have this in the background. I want to soften up kind of the tops of the distant trees and attempt to achieve a few layers of trees, where I'll have a far distant soft and then a closer layer front. One thing that's fun with this wet and wet is just taking a wet rigger, just pure water, or even no water on it, and start putting in shapes. This will give you some interesting effects. So if you want some textural effects, some variety in that, we could use that. This is just pure water, just to let it start displacing stuff. I could add texture for foliage, and then I could come back in and just add and subtract my shapes. So far we haven't mixed any other pigment in except for these two. Just still in that build up, splash and stage. Whenever you paint to the edges. That's what I do to make the illusion of the whole scene, even though a matte will crop it. In this region, I'll wind up pulling out a barn. I'll probably wind up scraping or lifting it. We'll see. We have the water. One thing that I've started to enjoy is to take a long, flat roll of paper edge and just pull in that fashion. And that gives a very interesting approach. All right. Let's see. So here's the point where I can start mixing in. Like I said, let's do the lamp black. So rather than paint square, let's see how this plays into it. This one is backlit, so the it's going to have that silhouette effect with it. It also has a higher density, so less light comes through it, so it's darker. And we're also making it dark, so that's the stopping point for the eye. And then it is also playing the part of the kind of extreme contrast of dark near the light right here. So it's serving a lot of purposes. Also, if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, please comment down below, ask questions, let me know what you think. Of course, if you're interested, please like, subscribe, follow. I paint a lot, so I always have new videos. And if you ask a question, I always try to answer it. So, feel free, don't be a stranger. I have a Patreon account that I'll link down below, so if you're ever interested in being a supporter, please consider that. If you don't want to do that, or if you can't do that, that's totally fine. I completely understand. I just enjoy having people watch and look and comment and enjoy my art. So, not to belabor the point, just the Patreon account is just there to help with art supplies and whatnot. I'm just pulling up little textures, just getting little things going. I do want to pull out a barn. Now this is something that I have not done with this painting technique, is add a structure. Usually I'll paint in a structure in other painting techniques, or I'll scrape a structure out. Most likely what I'll do here is I'll scrape. I just don't want to do a damaging effect on the paper with this. So I'm going to pull right about here. And we'll have that be the barn. And I could pull out the shape of the roof as well. And then I'm going to wind up painting around it and darkening some spots and putting a dark door on it. So unfortunately it's not pulling out super light with the card. I'm going to try to take it to paper towel, see if I can pull any pigment out of there. That could also result to what's known as melanin foam, which is what's the name of it? It's the I sell it next to the sponges and all that. It's a cleaning sponge, not used for utensils because it's pretty much just an abrasive, so I think it could potentially adhere to plates and whatnot, so you don't want to like consume it. But there's no chemicals in it from what I've read, so magic eraser, that's the name of it. Okay, so we're just gonna let it sit there a little bit. I'm also going to pull the shadow out, the reflection of the light part. The door I'm going to wind up painting, or we're going to wind up covering over with a bush like there was in the Herman Herzog painting. So that's going to get reflected down. We could potentially put other lights that'll reflect down and make it interesting, but that's the start. So that is probably the big experiment here, is adding those two objects in it as well as having that interesting light source. In fact, I'm getting pretty excited about this because this one right here, we're going to have a dark shadow behind it. And that dark is going to carry down right next to this light reflection. So that's going to be pretty cool, I think. So it's back to going back and forth with textures and whatnot. I think I will add a gentleman walking to this edge. In the Herman Herzog painting, there is a gentleman here, and he's walking to go fishing. I think I will put somebody in this region just because we have so much going on here. I do want to gently lift some textures and see what type of lights we can pull out. But I really want to build up the darks here. I just want just a kind of blend of the tree into the shadow, as well as us knowing that there is overgrowth and grass and whatnot in that shadow. So it's a kind of mixture of lights and darks and texture. So I don't know if that makes sense. I hope it does. It's a little thick for a trunk for this spot, but we'll roll with it. Take the rigor. A lot of the stuff is wet and wet still, even though I have been using I've been using the paper towel. So the paper towel is the one that is causing any spots where we're going to get definition, because we already pulled the water out of that spot, and that adds just a natural, interesting variety to it, an incidental variety. Grabbing more of that lamp black, just laying it in there. Now let's see. Apologize for being a little sniffly. Some darks down here. Not really going for much definition, just like I said, mixtures of tonal values and textures to give the illusion of something taking place. Let me stand up, take a look, see how everything's looking. Get the overall view. It's going to be fun darkening this up back in here, around that. Adding that barn door that I was talking about. Working that edge. Let's see. Okay, So we'll do one more textured. Now we have a variety of soft and a little bit more defined shapes taking place. Very light padding. Blend it down into here. More lamp black into this mix just to darken this side up. Vary our strokes. Let's darken this to kind of stop this corner. We'll put our guy in here. Let's start building this up. I may have to do a dry off at this point soon. I don't want to just yet though. I want to see how far I can push the tones and the texture while it's still wet. That's dry right there. Let's bring a little water underneath. All right. Little highlights. What I'm trying to do is layer tones to give that illusion of trees and forest behind this building, and layers of those. We could even take the rigger and do a little bit of pushing and movement, create those ideas as well. All right, let's do a dry off and we'll take a look. We'll see how the tonal shift takes place, because like I said, this one is an experiment with having black, lamp black, as opposed to Payne's gray, ultramarine, or phthalo blue. All right, this is very interesting. Remember, we've only used Venetian red, sap green, and lamp black, but it looks like almost a sepia type study. Pronunciation of that, I'm not too sure. I think the jury's still out on that one. So we did see a tonal shift as it dried, and it is interesting that the last marks that I did with the lamp black, those guys stood out a lot more after we dried comparatively to what we were just what we had prior to that drawing. So I'm going to try to get a little bit more green, dark, concentration. And let's build up another layer of foliage. So I'm using the hake where it's all wild at this point, and this is to give the illusion of leaves. So we have the softness behind it, and we have that wildness in front. And this is just to kind of put texture in, add variety, and let this just sit on top of that softened background we just put in, kind of the underpainting. This is mixing with that lamp black. I am going to create that bush that goes in front of the barn that I was talking about. I can use the side of the rigger to get a texture as well. So this is the foliage that's closest to the edge. And the wet, and soften that reflection up. I'm going to take that dark. This is alongside that building, so that's a harsh shadow that's taking place. And that's helping it sit in there. And I can also start like texturizing this as well. Now, let's see. So I'm darkening that up. I'm going to pull that darkness down into the water as a reflection. Sit in place. Just use the rigger very gently to create that little edge that's underneath the roof of a building, of a barn or something. Maybe drawing a little bit of, or paint in a little bit of the shadow that roof would cast. And here is the dark barn door. So from an hour study or more of that Herman Herzog painting, I learned about this barn element that we could add in. And he used a lot of stuff that I had talked about in a barn painting video where we have counter change taking place, where we're grounding it in place, and in the background we scraped it out as well. So it was pretty cool coming across that painting by him and then doing a study from it. And I learned a lot. I don't know how well known he is as a painter. The Herman Herzog, I'll put his paper right here. He was that German painter, studied at a German school, then came to America and painted and became one of the Hudson River Valley painters, or at least part of that school or that movement, that idea. Okay, so and hopefully I remember that name, because years from now or weeks from now I'll move on to another painter and start studying him and seeing what we can learn, what we can add. But hopefully we could get these names out there and back into circulation. I think he died, I don't know if he died in the late 1800s or the early 1900s, unfortunately. Oh, yeah, he would be like 200 years old. He'd be very old. So we could add a tree back here. Just play around. Anyway, let's stop playing with this background. Let's move our attention to the foreground. Mix dark. Add another layer of kind of a trunk and branches. I try not to trace over the ones that are already previously there. If I do that, that's solely for the purpose of trying to darken what's already there. But if we do not trace over those, we then get layers of a soft one and then one that's darker and closer. So keep that in mind. Just a simple little switch up of where you're putting the next layer of paint can add depth to it. Let's try to texturize this and see if we can get almost a vertical, as if it's kind of like an overhang. So I'm just using the side of that rigger. And then I'll pull it out. Let's get pure lamp black back on this side to stop the eye. I'm going to try to soften up this texture on this side and see how that works to kind of get more of a mass. And that is for me to start mimicking the way the eye works, where the eye will focus only on so much in one spot, and everything else will kind of soften around it. So this is a movement away from the Hudson River Valley School and into some landscape ideals in the late 1800s. I think I mentioned how Velázquez, somebody recently that I was reading, had talked about Velázquez's self-portrait. The hair and the cheeks were very soft and blended together, while the eye was very sharp, and it drew the attention to that. Now, since we introduced scraping in this video, we'll do a little bit talking about that. We could scrape a little bit more in tree structures if you want. You can get some lines and shapes in here, and that'll give you some movement. You could also scrape out rock structures. But I think I am ready to paint our person. Now, if you're ever unsure, you can grab a piece of paper. I had a piece here a moment ago, and of course, it is it's right here. You can always just kind of sketch out what you're thinking. For this one, we have the gentleman, where his head's going to be, his body orientation, his feet, the arms, if he's holding anything slung over the shoulder, if we own a big old fishing pole or a rifle, something like that. I just kind of really just briefly sketched. This was not going to be the final product, but it was just to show you that you could use a separate piece of paper. You could hold it in that spot and see how you think size-wise and how it affects things. So, I am going to take the leap. This is something that I talked about in the drawing video for the Herman Herzog drawing, where for this guy that was walking out, he was larger than I'm usually comfortable with drawing a figure in a landscape. So I'm going to mark where the feet go and where the head goes and kind of dot in. So this is a different approach. This is the way I use my fountain pen to kind of map out the guy. Shoulders, belt, pants, and that helps me create a little bit of proportion. And that's kind of my approach to drawing and whatnot, just getting an overall feel of somebody or the scene. I'm going to give him a hat. I think what we might do is give him we'll give him a gun for hunting. That's what we'll do. Darker on this far side. Bring some of this over. And the shadow helps him sit, coming from the light. We could add more horizontal movement for like the blades of grass and whatnot in their shadows, just to kind of get that a little bit idea going. I'm going to grab a little bit of light red. Just to try to get some variety. He's a little gaunt. We need to maybe widen him up a little bit. The lamp black. Okay, I think we'll just leave them at that. We'll just do some textural stuff for grass. And just add a little bit of flair. And we'll probably start calling it done. It's definitely a fun one. We could put birds and stuff in the sky. We could put ducks in the water. In fact, put bird right up in there. What type of bird that is, I'm not quite sure, but may stand up and take it all in, see if there's anything that think needs to be worked upon. Let's put a really interesting, some wild looking stuff right here. All right, let's dry this off. We'll put a mat over it and see if we're done. All right, so the black pushed us very, I guess you would say burnt umbre, sepia-ish. So it's interesting. It's kind of cool how that affected the sap green Venetian red palette. So it's definitely something that could be added to the repertoire for a different feel to the paintings, where essentially I could just take the same approach, or we could take the same approach and change our color, and it'd be like playing a song in a different scale or a different key, and it just really switches things up. So here we go. Here's the final result, and I'll get it all uploaded for you all to check out. All right, have a great day. Bye.